Today on the Rising Digital Leaders Show, we have the Chief Information Security Officer from Collins Aerospace, Alexandra Heckler. Alexandra's story is one of embracing your uniqueness. You'll see how her early fascination with high-performance vehicles, combined with her expertise in consulting and international relations, has made her exceptionally valuable as a digital executive. Here's what you'll learn today. The benefits of viewing your organization as a living organism to deliver digital capabilities. We talk about instruments of power, reframing cybersecurity as geopolitics, and operating as a diplomat inside and outside the business. We also discuss the value of surrounding yourself with people who are your polar opposites, those that counterbalance you with very different worldviews and skills. And finally, on a very human level, remembering that everyone is fighting a battle that you don't see. I got so much out of this conversation, and I know you will too. Please enjoy. Welcome to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. I am your host, Matthew Doan. Today's organizations are powered by digital capabilities. Cloud, data science, cybersecurity, and much more. To be competitive, we must have tech-savvy leaders steering the ships. But these people don't come out of thin air. We must develop them. This show is for the technical experts of the world, those brave souls that feel unheard and lost in the crowd, but know they were born to lead. We need you to rise, to become impactful digital leaders. In these episodes, we help you undergo a self-transformation, developing the mindset and skill set that'll massively enhance your abilities, influence, and career potential. We take a different approach, pulling in lessons from philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and history to enrich the professional and personal aspects of your life. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. Now, let's dig in. Alexandra Heckler, welcome to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Great. Really glad to be here, Matt.
Yeah. So for everyone else in our audience, Alexandra is the Chief Information Security Officer of Collins Aerospace. And we'll go into that a lot more as we go. But diving right into a story I heard a lot about. Alexandra, tell me about this. You were 6 years old working with your dad on a 68 Corvette. How does this inform the rest of your life?
Absolutely. So as a kid, my dad and I took on all sorts of projects together. And at the time, I thought, it was really fun learning the difference, what different tools are, what's a monkey wrench, that kind of a thing, and being able to pass and play along and really helping him rebuild this 68 Corvette. I mean, we took it apart, put it back together again, 2 or 3 different times. One time, we ended up basically, the car ran on jet fuel. We had to go to the local airport to be able to gas up. And we installed surround sound speakers before that was even really a thing. And what I didn't realize at the time is my dad was really using that as an opportunity to pack in as much sort of lesson sharing with me as possible. Because he had juvenile diabetes, knew he was going to die young. And so he wanted to share as many life lessons as he possibly could in as few moments as we had. And really the big lesson to me out of that one is sometimes you need to take something apart, understand it completely differently before moving forward. Other sort of key lessons out of that one too is you can reinvent something, even if you have the same pieces and parts. There's constantly ways to tweak and improve things. And if you're just a little bit curious and you find a partner who knows more than you on some things, you'll definitely attack it differently and come out with a better product on the far side.
No, that's wonderful. Did you ever get that out on the strip, drive that car at any point in your life?
Oh, yeah. Actually, one of my uncles had it for a while and recently sold it. But it's made its way around the family and all the car lovers. So it's a great one.
Yeah, reinvention, keeping things up to the latest and greatest. That's wonderful. So I'm curious, so if you're thinking about, you're building all these the new configuration of a car from all the old pieces, and you're trying to make it do more. You're trying to get higher performance out of it. These are some good life lessons, like you talked about, kind of thinking from part to whole. How might that inform what you've been doing professionally in the last decade plus at this point?
Yeah, so I started my career in consulting, which was when I was first learning about what is consulting, I was told it's problem solving and learning one step faster than your client, which is an awesome way of describing consulting. But ultimately, I think the successful consultants that I worked with always sort of stepped back, looked at the problem that their clients were having, and could reframe it, see it in a different way. Is this just a symptom of the problem? Is this really a problem? How do we actually kind of go through and figure out the right path forward, and until we truly understand what the problem is and how things work today? And so definitely understanding that kind of current state, laying it all out, building that very clean picture, and then, from there, being able to see the patterns and understand how to recreate the future. Definitely applied in the consulting world. And now as I've moved into Collins Aerospace this past year, things are different once you go in-house versus consulting. It's not just making pretty slides and moving on to the next challenge. You own the problems, you own the mission, you own the operations in the long haul. And certainly we do so with a number of partners. And it's taking that consulting mindset into this position has been really helpful.
Yeah. Would love your take on this. You talked a little bit about current state and understanding the patterns of today. I see a lot of technology organizations come in with a playbook. I've done this before in my old organization, and the leader comes in and said, this is what we're going to do, rinse and repeat once again. How has current state really been helpful in making sure that you're customizing what you're doing for your organization?
Yeah, totally. We very often rinse and repeat the old playbooks, the old set of slides. Here's what a roadmap looks like. And it's certainly good to take advantage of knowledge you've built, but every new challenge requires a slightly different look at things. And so understanding that current state is key to figuring out, which version of the template can you reuse, or what new things you need to build to really tailor for that particular problem set. So, anytime that I'm coming up to a new challenge, I always find myself looking inwards and outwards. So inwards within the company, talking to a couple of different people, trying to understand what's working, what's not, asking completely random questions too sometimes to just get a sense of what the culture is, how people are working together, what makes them tick. Externally, doing different research across different industries, adjacent industries, you can also often find some really great lessons learned, and similar challenges and how other organizations dealt with them. So inward within the organization, external across industry, and then from there, you kind of need to wipe the slate clean and say, okay, getting rid of all of the assumptions of today. What is that future state? What is the North Star that we're aiming for? In an ideal world, where we go, what would we do? And then you got to anchor it in reality, unfortunately. So then you got to add back in the assumptions, add back in the fact that we don't have, unlimited money, time, people. And so definitely important to go back to that current state. But I think it's important to also let some of those assumptions go as you're figuring out what that North Star is.
Yeah. And like Mike Tyson, the great philosopher, said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face, which is reality within any modern organization, right? Wonderful. So you
100%.
So you're talking about internal and external, getting a wide view of the world, and that's been key to your leadership stature and what you've been able to do. I've heard you talk a lot about ecosystems and what that could be an applicable concept to working in a digital organization. How does ecosystem apply in your world?
Yeah, so I lead digital cybersecurity within Collins Aerospace, right? So traditional IT infrastructure, as well as our OT, or our manufacturing infrastructure. And then I also own a portion of product security, any of the IT-based products that we design, build, and sell our customers. I have a counterpart who's responsible for sort of the overall product cybersecurity, a woman named Linda Payton. And she's responsible for securing any of the bent metal products that we sell our customers, right? Where's the line, though, between product and IT? Every day, it's getting more and more blurry. Then you add in physical security. A lot of our cyber controls rely on physical security and who has access to two different spaces. And so I partner really closely with this woman, Michelle Jones, who leads our physical security organization. And sort of between that trifecta, the lines are blurring more and more. And so you need to take that ecosystem approach, because where cyber often can go wrong is those overlap points, but between the different organizations. What is a product versus IT? Who's got responsibility? Who's paying attention where? And really, I think looking at our digital ecosystem as one company, as one Collins, as one Raytheon, our parent organization, is crucial to making sure that we've got the right coverage in the right places.
Great points. If you think for a moment, the common person that might be listening to this show right now, say it's a 32-year-old ambitious technical professional, cybersecurity, analytics, cloud, as they start to get into a position of leadership, you talked also about looking externally. You've also had some experience with external organizations, coalition groups. What advice would you give them for working externally as well to make sure that the internal mission is as successful as possible?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So I think the one tactical piece of advice for anybody in this field: find an ally, find a peer that has polar opposite skill sets from what you bring to the table. Like I used to work really, really closely with this guy, Steve Miller. He was our Excel spreadsheet ninja, and I would make the PowerPoint slides. And together we could accomplish anything. And yes, we could both do one another's jobs, but I respect the fact that he is way more talented than me at certain things. And he hated doing the PowerPoints and the comms. And so for me to take that on for him, together we were able to accomplish so much more. And so definitely know the limits of your strengths and find somebody that's got the counterbalance. And together you'll accomplish a lot more. So that's sort of piece one. Diving in on that, that's your point about sort of the external industry leadership. One of the projects that I took on early in my career was helping to build one of the information sharing and analysis centers for the automotive industry. Unbelievable opportunity to bring together all the different OEMs, automakers, suppliers, commercial vehicle companies, and really gain some exposure to very senior people across the industry solving the challenges of tomorrow together. And, the first time we got everybody in a room together, it was crickets. It was dead silence. And eventually we were able to tear down the walls and build some great relationships, and the organization continues to thrive today. And as you're working in the field of cybersecurity, digital technology, this is one of the few spots where you can be frenemies with peer organizations across industries, because the cyber threat affects all of us. An attack on any one is an attack on all. And so there's different frameworks, different opportunities to work together around digital technology and particularly the cyberspace. Learn from one another. And whether that's, just informal conversations or through formal organizations like an ISAC, together we are stronger. And I've always found it to be really important to look externally and to build those relationships. And even now, today in my position, I reach out to a couple of the people I met through that auto ISAC, just to say, hey, I'm experiencing this. What are you seeing? Hey, we're building out this type of program. How has your journey gone? And to have those people to tap into outside of your own organization gives you somebody that you can reach to at any time to just bounce ideas off one another and continuously learn together.
That's a great way to put it. If I think back to you talking about both the internal and external engagements, that is key to success in someone in your position. It makes me think about how different that is from 5-10 years ago in any technology organization, where you were purely back office, heads down on your discipline, whatever that is, making the most you can just getting capability out to the world. And you didn't have a lot of engagement. You were completely back office. Now you're describing a whole paradigm where you need to be out there. The leaders need to be out there building relationships, networking, influencing, getting a network, a coalition in place to actually achieve a mission. That's just so different than it used to be.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, it's coalition building is such a key part of being on the leadership track. And whether that's internal and making friends, if you're in cyber, making friends with your infrastructure counterparts or a business leader who can help you on your journey, but also those external partnerships across the industry on both sides. Leading through influence is the most effective leadership you can have, really. You're not always going to have all the money in the world. You're not always going to have all the power to make all the choices you want in your silo. Cybersecurity spans across all areas of the business now, and so you need to have that coalition building. You need to be able to work together in a whole new way.
It actually triggers a conversation I feel like you and I had a while ago. I don't know why this comes to mind, but we talked about engaging hearts and minds. You can affect hearts or minds with your messaging, but not necessarily at the same time. So you need to understand when to turn on the logic part of your brain and engage the logic and the rational, or the emotion, and you start to hit them with more inspirational messages of what we could all be as community, and always knowing when to split the difference on the occasion and the context.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, there are some people, if you're all heart, you're going to lose a lot of your audience. If you're all logic, you're going to lose a lot of your audience. And so you need to sort of switch between them. Absolutely. That was a long time back.
Yeah, it just triggered. So thank you for that. So along these lines and key to your success, you're out there and you're engaging with folks. I can't help but think that your educational background, or in service of all things, might have a play here. How might that be helpful to what you do today with your education?
Yeah, so I oftentimes, like my mentors will ask me, how did you go from studying foreign service or sort of international relations to cyber? Not a logical connection on surface value. But what I've realized in the last couple of years is international relations was the perfect place to start to get to cybersecurity. A couple of reasons. One, geopolitics is playing out in a new space. It's now playing out in cybersecurity. So if you understand international affairs and you understand how different countries are working against each other or partnering with each other and what their priorities are and what that means in terms of sort of geopolitical trends, you're actually well prepared to understand the cyber threats that we're dealing with. So that's piece one. Piece two, I think, is going back to the sort of hearts and minds comment you made a moment ago. Being a cyber executive is about sort of internal international relations, being able to translate from business to technical and vice versa, being able to speak zeros and one moment and dollars and cents the next, and being able to work across borders, whether that's, working at a global company where you're dealing with different cultures all around the world, or even different cultures between, engineering organization versus the IT organization versus OGC, your general counsel, et cetera. So between the geopolitics playing out in the cyberspace and then that collaboration across borders, I think that's really why it actually prepared me really well.
The idea of being a diplomat of sorts, you're like the Secretary of State within your organization trying to build bridges in order for everyone to get to a better place, right? Because everyone knows they need the cybersecurity or if it's another capability like analytics, for instance, everyone knows they need it, but there's resistance or misunderstanding, and we're just talking past each other in different languages. And the more that we can build bridges and get to shared understanding of what everyone's trying to do, usually it all maps to the same place. And everyone's incentivized to help the overall organization. You look at your incentives, you look at what you're looked at for performance reviews, it all maps up to that. So the more that we can build relationships and align on those strategic objectives, the better everyone turns out. So you're talking about a really good skill there with diplomacy and understanding how to get out there and get the relationships built that are necessary.
100%. Cyber diplomacy is a
that.
big
I like
piece,
the way you
for
talked
sure.
about it. Cyber is just geopolitics playing out in a different sphere. Talk to me a little bit about, in the cybersecurity mission, this is a shape-shifting thing. I've spent a lot of time there myself in my career, and the threats are always evolving. The organization that you're trying to protect is always morphing into something new products and services, or it's reconfiguring itself. Its people are always changing. How do you ensure that you're protecting that organization as the environment is always shape-shifting on you?
You're spot on. Everything in every direction is changing, right? I mean, so my team's mission is to protect Collins Aerospace from cyber threats, which are constantly changing. So we're always fighting the bad guys. We're also always meeting the requirements of the good guys, right? So there's all these different compliance requirements, whether that's regulatory, military customers. We've also got our commercial customers who are constantly changing requirements, and then our own internal policies as well, as we come together as one Raytheon here. So we're dealing with the good guys, the bad guys. We're dealing with change on both sides, and then our own landscape that we're protecting. Increasingly digital every day. We've gone through a number of acquisitions over the years, which has expanded that environment that we're responsible for. And so, how do you constantly evolve in all directions without becoming just a chaos of change at all times? I think there's a couple of ways that we've managed the chaos, and certainly there's always more work to do. But a couple of things I think that are really important is one, there's different levels of risk assessments that need to happen within an organization. There's very tactical level for individual systems, applications, et cetera. But then there's also a more sort of strategic look at risk that we need to take, which we do on sort of a quarterly basis. We do a check-in, and once a year we do a full risk workshop across what is it that matters most to the business, where is it that we see these risks, and what are we going to do about it, right? So having multiple layers of risk assessment kind of bubbling up to that strategic view, and using that to really drive our actions. If we know our threat actors are all doing ABC, shouldn't we be protecting against ABC? 100%. And so you've got to kind of re-architect where you're headed as a program to address the risk of yesterday. But we also need to look ahead and recognize that threat is going to change. So what else do we think is going to evolve, and then adding those sort of projects in as well. So taking that kind of risk-based view is piece one, and constantly updating. The other thing I would say is we're working from a plan based on what we know right now. And to get to where we need to go, there's a lot of change that needs to take place. We're pushing new policies, new technologies, we're consolidating our tech stack, all of this change. And our end customers are just seeing, new agents being added to their computers. They're seeing new policies that they have to follow. They're seeing this and that. And it's overwhelming, and people get exhausted with change, right? And so one of the things that I've really encouraged my team to do is, rather than feeding our customers their vegetables all the time, we also need to give them a bite of chocolate every once in a while. So while we're changing everything left and right, a great example of this is we were rolling out multi-factor authentication, and that's sort of eating your vegetables. The bite of chocolate that came along with it, once you have your multi-factor authentication set up, you don't have to update your password every 30 days anymore. You can now update every 90. Nice, easy thing. Users are excited that they don't have to update their password and remember every 30 days, but we're also improving the security of the organization. And so balancing your chocolate and your vegetables has definitely been a mindset across the team to navigate some of the chaos as well.
Love that. That's a great example. You're going to exhaust everyone you're trying to serve, and you need to be conscious of that. That's not something many leaders in the tech space are well versed in. They're like, I'm just going to do everything as best I can, and it's going to be game-changing engineering, and that's that. But you're thinking, okay, who are the people on the other side of the fence? Who needs to accept what we're delivering? Who needs to partner with us? And how do we make sure their feelings and thoughts are accounted for so that this whole ship steers in the right direction? Let me ask you this. When you think about being a CISO, relatively new into this role, it's an impressive accomplishment. What have you found to be most challenging now being in this particular role?
Yeah, so I joined Collins May of 2020. So I have not met my team in person. We were all remote already with COVID at that point. And so I'd say personally, there has been the challenge of taking on a new team, getting to know a new organization while all remote. Lots of tips and tricks there. Happy to share if people ever want to reach out, but some really big ones, I think. The thing I realized I was missing most was the end of day conversation as you're walking to your car, or, you're taking the elevator in the middle of the day and you got a 30-second kind of, hey, how's it going, chit chat with people on the team. You can't schedule those. You can't set up a 30-minute call to have the chit chat, and we're all in Zoom meetings all day, every day. And so creating the time and space to get to know people a little bit more personally, that was something really important to me. And my team, we started doing these sort of coffee chats where 15 minutes, can't talk about work, and the meeting ends 15 minutes in. It's 5 random people, sometimes who know each other, sometimes who don't. And it's just random, cool, interesting things. Hey, what's the next trip you've got planned? What's going on this weekend? Tell me about your kid's soccer game. All the fun little things that matter to people that they care about a bunch. And creating the time and space for that has been really, really helpful, along with a number of other things along the way. But that's just sort of one example of how to get over the remote onboarding. The other big challenge, more from sort of a functional perspective, we as Collins Aerospace are merging a number of different companies. Rockwell Collins, United Technologies Aerospace Systems, which was comprised of Goodrich and Hamilton Sandstrand. Within Rockwell, there's also a number of different businesses. And so there's all these different cultures across the organization, and there's all these different security postures and different approaches to business across Collins. And so we've been on this journey to get to one Collins. And to make things even more fun, then last year we had the merger between Raytheon and United Technologies, our parent company at the time. So we're on this journey to one Collins, and in a really cool way, actually, we are helping inform the one RTX, the one Raytheon journey as well. And figuring out how to, it's a technology and a culture thing, right? We've got to get to one tech stack. We've got to get to one culture, one way of doing business, one team, one mission, one vision, and really making that happen. It's so hard sometimes to see the change that you're making. I mean, when you're climbing up a hike, right? If every step you turn around and look behind you, it doesn't look like you're making progress. If you walk 5 miles, if you walk up a hill and then you turn around and you can see the view, you realize you've made progress. And so figuring out what are those right moments to turn around and realize, hey guys, we did this, and be proud and take a moment to take a breath and look at the progress we're making. That has been a lot of fun. It has been a challenge to figure out sort of how we can keep getting a little bit better every day, while keeping the energy up, while preventing burnout, while making a difference to our security posture overall.
Yeah. You make me think when you describe one Collins, one Raytheon, complete unification. Over the years, I've experienced many of those transformations where everyone tries to get into complete unity, one culture, one tech stack. Take your industry, everyone tries to do it. To play devil's advocate here, to look at the counterpoint, do you see any value in ever having your own little culture or own separate way of doing technology that's a little bit different from the rest of the greater whole? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that it definitely can. And there's sort of a couple of use cases where I think it's most valuable to have those kind of distinct pockets. One is where there's like a specific customer need, right? So we do a bunch of classified work. Those classified labs are always going to be segmented off and sort of run slightly differently. Our approach is different because of just the nature of the work, the way the customer expects us to deliver, both the internal and the external customer. So certainly there are spots where you need to be different to meet your customer needs. Related to that, I think being a global company, across the world, there are just different cultures and ways of working together. What works in Puerto Rico may or may not work in India. What works in India may or may not work in the Ukraine, right? I mean, we need to make sure that we are mindful of local cultures and having them kind of nest within the broader one, absolutely. But it's okay to have some sort of tailoring, whether that's culture or tech. I think that's useful. And then the one last one, which personally I'm intrigued by, is it's good sometimes to create a pocket or two that encourages kind of innovation and completely new ways of doing things. And if you allow that entity to kind of live the future, then you can see, hey, does this work for us as an organization as a whole? If it does, great, let's replicate everywhere. And if it doesn't, okay, fine, let's move on, try the next thing. And so to have kind of a pocket or two where you can test out different, whether it's technologies or ways of working, I think it can be really healthy to continuously challenge the organization as a whole to get better.
Yeah, spot on. I compare that to, I see a lot of organizations wholesale adopting Agile across the entire company. And that's a massive, massive endeavor, often years long, to get that to a better place. What I've seen better is when you get small pockets, maybe adopting Agile ways of working in a certain methodology, test it out, you prove successes, you use that to get other people excited by it, you draw them in that way versus doing these massive, sweeping, years-long transformations that exhaust everyone and frankly don't always work out very well. So I like that idea of those little pockets of innovation, seeing what works, what'll stick culturally, what'll stick technology-wise, and making sure that you're doing the right thing, but you're pretty agile. You're not going all in with your investments.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, otherwise, across Raytheon, we're a 200,000 person company. Implementing change takes years and years and years. And so if you can have some pockets where you can kind of move a little faster with purpose and within the broader mission values, then I think it's definitely healthy to constantly challenge ourselves to be better.
Yeah, and give people chocolate along the way, right? Make sure.
Exactly.
So I've got a few rapid fire questions. Are you game?
Yes.
All right.
100%.
So we are recording here in June 2021, well over a year into the pandemic. What has the pandemic taught you?
What has the pandemic taught me? So my entire life, I've been of the mindset that when somebody asks you, is the glass half full or half empty? I've always said, no, it's 100% full. The bottom half is water. The top half is air. The whole thing is full of something. And this year in particular, having that kind of positive mindset has been really helpful in a number of ways, because there has been a lot of good. There's been a lot of terrible things, not denying that by any means, but you get to control sort of the lens through which you see the world. You know, if you want to assume positive intent in others, you know, that they're not out to get you, that they're just coming from a different place. If you want to maintain relationships with people despite all of the chaos and figuring out the right way to do that, if you bring that kind of positive energy, it definitely can help get through some of those tough times. And of course, when you feel down, you got to feel down. You can't cover up your emotions, but if your core being is kind of that positive energy, it's infectious, and everybody kind of can be better when they're around somebody that brings that little bit of positivity.
Yeah. It also triggers to mind, as you said that, about other people doing wrong. The Stoics, in their philosophy, they like to say that nobody does wrong or evil willingly. They're all doing what they think is best, often driven by their own individual or community needs. Even some of the most, quote, evil people in history were utterly convinced in their own heads that it was the right thing to do. They weren't trying to do evil. They were trying to do what was best. And when you start to be that And when you take that empathetic mindset and when you look at people around you, you can start to be a little bit more reflective and understanding as to why people are doing what they are. And then maybe you just need to have a conversation to get to a better place. Great point.
Yeah, well, that reminds me too. Like with when Chadwick Boseman passed away last year, there was a quote floating around for a while, basically saying, you know, everybody is fighting a battle that you don't see. And the more and more I just I keep that on a sticky note near my laptop here. The more and more you think that, the more and more empathy you can have. And you know, it's so true, especially this last year, we've all been fighting at least one thing, whether it's visible or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question for you.
Yes.
What's a recent moment that brought you joy?
Recent moment that brought me joy. I was out in Lake Tahoe celebrating our vaccinations finally being done with a couple of friends over Memorial Day weekend. And we were sitting out on the dock looking up at the stars and just being around people, breaking the routine for a little bit. And, you know, it's sort of the polar opposite of the chaos we've dealt with last year, you know, staring at a computer screen all day, every day, just looking up at the stars and enjoying every moment of it. It just made me absolutely thrilled.
Nature does wonderful things.
Always.
Books. Got a question about that. Which one have you most gifted or recommended, and why?
So two different directions. One is the 4-Hour Work Week. Fantastic tips, tricks of how to bring order to chaos in your life, and also to be a little bit less overwhelmed, you know. So that's been a big one over the years for me. The other one that was more recent, right before I started this position, I bought the book, Mary Barra's biography called Road to Power. And being a woman in a technical space and just having sort of a bit of a role model is always nice to kind of see, hey, how has somebody else made a big journey through a company in an absolutely unbelievable way, and sort of what are some of the lessons to learn from others.
Yeah, Mary Barra, quite the impressive figure, what she's doing at GM and changing their future. It's shocking and beautiful all at the same time. Very ambitious and good for the world too.
Yeah, rock star.
Yeah. What's something you believe that others might think is crazy?
Great one. So one of the things that I believe that others have definitely thought is crazy over the years is the idea that knowledge is not a zero-sum game of power. If I know something and you don't know something, that doesn't make me more powerful. If we both know it, we're going to go do things together in a whole different way, rather than me holding on to that piece of information for my own personal gain. There are many people that agree. There are many people that don't agree, I think. But that's definitely one that pops to mind.
One more for you here. If you were starting your career now, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Know when to listen and when to speak.
Tell me more.
So I think oftentimes we feel that being in a room, you've got to have your voice heard to add value. And sometimes the value is just you sitting there and learning and listening and absorbing and taking notes, and after the fact reflecting and figuring out how can I take that knowledge and now apply it and make change happen. You don't always need to be the one speaking in the room to add value to that room. You can also kind of quietly on the side encourage a friend to speak up because they need that moment to shine. You can also take that knowledge and share it with others on your team after the fact. And that's the value that you might get out of it is sharing that with others. So I think knowing when to listen and when to speak, helps you stand out in a crowd as well. Because if you're the kind of person that's always talking, people aren't always listening. If you're purposeful with when you speak and it is a true contribution to what's being said, people stop and listen to you every time you speak. And you build a reputation and can become sort of that trusted advisor.
That triggers something in my mind. There's a book, 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And one of the things he talks about, I'm paraphrasing here, which is essentially become scarce, make yourself scarce. And one of the ways to become scarce is by speaking up very strategically and less often than everyone else. So when your voice is absent, people subconsciously start missing it. And when you do speak, which is less often than everyone else, it is a lot more impactful. People's ears perk. They listen, take it to heart a lot more. So if you think about making yourself as a leader more scarce in different ways, including how much you speak, it's game changing.
It can be. And, that's not to say slack off and do nothing, right? I mean, that's not the direction here. It's about purpose and mindfulness and really using your voice in the most powerful way you can.
You're like a sensory and context gathering machine when you're quiet, right? You're listening and taking it all in, and you're getting a perspective while everyone else is just talking at each other.
Figuring out the next thing they have to say. It's hard to absorb what you're listening to when you're constantly thinking of what you need to say next. So
wonderful. Few wrap-up questions for our time here today. First one is, how do you rise each day?
How do I rise each day? Well, I am a breakfast person. So typically I wake up because of hunger. And so my morning, it's always for me about just, I need a glass of milk right away because otherwise I am not a conscious human and can barely make my own breakfast. From there, I, to really, once I've met the hunger needs, kind of depends on the day. Sometimes I just need to start my morning with some happiness and watching, some trash TV show that just makes me laugh out loud. Other days, I'm ready to go, hungry to learn, and I'm reading, the Week magazine or the Atlantic or a couple of different ones, starting my day off of a screen and just kind of paging through something. So typically one of those two things, once I've dealt with the hunger, which is very important to me rising like a real human. So.
Got to fuel the body before the mind can do any good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all one.
Oh, yeah. Most people need coffee. I need food.
Yeah. Where can people connect with you more?
In terms of, like, if...
online, how can they stay connected to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So easiest way to sort of stay connected with me, I think, is probably via LinkedIn. Is probably the one I check most often. Go through spurts on and off with Twitter. Email is mess of an inbox, but certainly if you send me a second, third, eventually I'll answer. But LinkedIn is definitely up there.
Yeah, especially for the people outside your organization, easier way to get to. That's good to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So last one for you. What closing message would you like to leave with our audience here today?
Closing message to leave with the audience. I think as we're all on a journey towards whether it's technology leadership, business leadership, there's a couple of key lessons I've learned over the years that really matter most. One, which I shared earlier, is find peers that have different strengths than you. Build a partnership. Go conquer the world together. The second one, which is sort of related, I think, is about finding great people that you're excited to work for and make yourself indispensable to them. Together you'll rise, you'll learn from one another in a whole different way when you make yourself their go-to person. And the sort of last item I would say is we're often trained to correct for our weaknesses. And there's a whole philosophy of just focusing on your strengths. The whole sort of strengths finder quiz. And I know, Matt, you and I took that a couple of years ago. And focusing on strengths, focusing on positives, focusing on the value that you can bring to an organization is so powerful. And surrounding yourself with the knowledge of what your weaknesses are is also crucial, because you've got to figure out how to fill those gaps. Sometimes that is about improving yourself. Like if you need to go take a finance course, if you need to go take a public speaking course and you're willing to and able to, awesome, do it. And if those are not your skills, find the people that can be your partner and complementary skill sets to address those gaps. So that'd be sort of the big three, kind of all fit together. Find that leader that you love working for, make yourself indispensable. Find those partners, those peers that you love working with. And do both of those things in a way where you know your strengths, your weaknesses, and sort of fill the gaps around you with those partners and peers.
I love that. I think that really summarizes a lot about you and our conversation here today. Alexandra, this has been wonderful. I step back and reflect for a second, and I look at you as a very emerging leader to watch in the digital cybersecurity space. People need to do more of what you're doing. Get out from just doing the technical work and understand what it takes to be a real leader and engage with others. Think about things from an ecosystem perspective. Understand what engagement and diplomacy looks like. Those are vital skills that I think a lot of people are a bit scared of, because no one teaches that to you in a certification or a computer science degree. And at best, it seems like something fuzzy that's happening for other people. But as we rise and become capable digital leaders, understanding those soft skills, the ability to bring others into your coalition is key. And one thing I'll also leave with is just, I love how grounded you are. The ability to reflect and understand what you're capable of, what you're not so great at, and then using that as input to work with other people very thoughtfully to complement yourself. And you don't think about trying to do it all yourself, but you figure out who might be useful and how they can get it done. And collaboratively, you're a network. You're a powerhouse as a group. So thank you for sharing your insights today. Really look forward to keeping this conversation going, watching your growth over time. Thanks, Alexandra.
Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. This is your host, Matthew Doan. Thank you for listening to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. Again, my mission is to help you elevate your career as a digital leader and live a thriving life. I hope this episode sparks new thinking and helps you take meaningful action in your world. If you enjoyed the experience, I'd be so grateful if you subscribed and left a 5-star review. That's it for now. Until next time, my friends, stay virtuous.